Thank you, Allie.
I guess I can go next. My name is Ansley. I am also a freshman, and I am a double major in English and Spanish.
My name is Kyla. I'm a junior at Francis Marion, and I'm a visual arts major with a specialty in painting.
My name is Jayden. I'm a rising junior, and my major is pre-nursing.
So as you can see, even in the class, we had like everybody studying different things. So basically, the idea for this course came because I am a dance instructor. I teach salsa, bachata, and kizomba and merengue, and just really felt like it was important to understand the roots of where these dances and the music came from. And this has been a really amazing, for me, it's been a really amazing semester. Getting a chance to offer this course with folks who had no connection to the Latin dance community. So it was really nice just to kind of hear their perspectives and just as they were learning things, their thoughts as they were learning things. And so what we were supposed to do, if we were still in class right now, this actually would have still been I'm trying to admit somebody, still would have been a Zoom presentation. But we would have been in our class. And the final of this semester was going to be a performance, which would have been a collection of all of their the research they've done. I did teach dance throughout the semester, so there were dances that we had choreographed that we were going to be a part of the performance. But I think what was going to be really an important part of the performance was going to be their reflections. So at the end of most classes or lectures that I did, I asked the students to do what I call a free write. And that is when they would just kind of write their thoughts about whatever topic it was we had done that day. And those reflections really, I feel, explain kind of what they were thinking and what they learned and their impressions about things. And so what we have decided to do is they have been sending me, they've sent me their reflections, and they've sent me, each one of them chose one of the dances that I taught this semester. And they did a short little performance of those dances. It's like literally 30 seconds to a minute. And what will be happening is I will be compiling all of those dances, their reflections, and a PowerPoint that was going to be a part of the performance, putting all that together in a video so that we can then share with people. And the goal was to use the dance and the music to educate, which was a big part of this, was using the arts to educate people about the roots of Afro-Latin dance. So that's something I'll be working on this week and into next week, is getting that video together. So you guys can expect to see it. And each one of them bought like these gorgeous, I'm so sad, these gorgeous outfits to wear for the performance. So they wear them. I'm about to tear up. I'm really sad about the way this semester ended, but anyway. So they wore their outfits in their videos, so you'll get to see them, which is pretty cool. Destinee just came in. Destinee, if you could enable your video and introduce yourself to everyone, Maybe say what year you are at Francis Marion, and what you're studying, if you could share that with everybody. And there's one more student that we're waiting for. Let's see. Me too, Dr. Magnula. Hey, Destinee.
Is it working? Okay, well, I'll start again. My name is Destinee. I'm a junior at Francis Marion. I study biology in hopes to go on to dental school.
All right. Oh, Destinee, if you could adjust your camera so that we get your full head. We're getting like, yes, there you go. Yay, we can see your smile. Okay. Destinee, so your PowerPoint, did you email it to me?
Yes.
You did? Okay. So let me pull that up real quick. And let's see.
This is Adalia.
Yeah?
Maybe their presentations could help me with my audition for school.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What school are you auditioning for?
Columbia College for dance.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so excited. You need to talk to me more about that. Okay. All righty. So we got about 2 minutes. And I have your PowerPoint, Destinee. So the order we're going to go in, I was going to start with Raina, but she hasn't gotten here yet. So let me send her something real quick. Let's see here.
I was about to say her internet might not be out because we had a storm.
Say that again, Jayden. There was a storm last night. Okay, good. So what we'll do then is instead of starting with Raina, and hopefully she can get in before the end of class, is we will get started with Alizabeth. Okay, and so for those of you who are here, thank you for joining and being our guest today. This is really nice. It feels like it's not happening in a vacuum, which is great. Oh, I'm sorry. I think Raina just may have responded to me.
She says she didn't get the link.
Okay, let me. Okay.
But I think Jayden sent it in our group chat we have.
Okay, Jayden, did you send that to her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. He just said yes, ma'am, y'all.
It's early in the morning, so you know my brain ain't on. So.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. So we'll get started with Alizabeth. But thank you to everyone who is here this morning to be a part of this. And if you have any questions or any comments, trying to leave time at the end for us to do like a Q&A. So if you can use the chat function to write any questions or comments that you have, and then that way, hopefully at the end of it, we can kind of have a discussion, okay? So we will get started with Allie. Let's see here. So Allie, start talking, Allie. I want to see if you will pull up large on my screen.
Okay. So for my research paper, I did a cultural appropriation versus appreciation of Afro-Latin dance. It's something that we discussed in class, but we didn't really go in depth with. And I really kind of wanted to go in depth with it because it was a topic that really interested me. And being, take, like, they'll take Afro-Latin dances and they'll twist it into something that it's not. And it was just really interesting to research it and kind of get a little bit more input about the whole topic.
Okay, so I got yours up, I think, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then you can start your presentation. So let me come here.
Raina say, could you like buzz her in?
Oh, yes. So for some reason, let's see here. There she is. Yay. Hey, Raina. Okay.
Okay. Hello.
Alrighty. Hey, Raina. So we're going to get started with Elizabeth, and then we will add you. You'll go after Elizabeth. That sound okay?
That's fine.
Okay, cool. Welcome. Okay. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, we're ready, Elizabeth.
Okay, so my topic was appropriation versus appreciation of Afro-Latin dances, since this is an Afro-Latin dance class, obviously. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so I started off with defining these two words because even though they mean two totally opposite things, people still get them confused today, which is it's just weird. So appropriation is the action of taking something for one's own use, typically without the owner's permission, which basically means people taking other people's ideas and twisting it into something totally different than what it is. Appreciation is the recognition and enjoyment of completely totally different meanings, and somehow they still can get confused with each other, especially in the dance world. You can go to the next. And this is a video about cultural appropriation and what it means to different people.
Go back. May have to, let's see if I can.
Yeah, you might have to copy and paste it. Sorry.
Okay.
And it's not coming from an authentic, genuine place. Something from a culture is being used without proper reference. Cultural appropriation in my own culture, being a Black woman, hair was definitely quite a hot topic. It only took people or celebrities of a certain color to make these hairstyles almost seem respectable or seem trendy. That, for me, was kind of like an insult. There was a phase where everyone wore keffiyehs, not really realizing what a keffiyeh was in any way, which is like a traditional like Palestinian scarf, associations with like political lines, and it became like a wider fashion thing.
When I see artists diving into Chinese culture and they're kind of using it in a way where is this anything to do with your narrative? Is this just merely an accessory, a trend to your work? That's when I feel it's getting a bit inappropriate.
You can't just like pick and choose what you think is cool from
it.
and use it to make money.
Call out culture is a bit crazy, so if you're not careful, you might get caught slipping.
I'm trying to get back to your thingy. What it does is every time it covers up you guys' presentations, every time I do share. So I'm having to come in and out of it. Okay. Now let me go back to sharing. Come out, please, sweetie. All righty.
Okay. So as you saw in the video, every culture experiences appropriation. It's not just African culture or Latin culture, it's every culture. And appropriation can come in different forms. Appropriation doesn't mean just taking something and changing it. It can also mean taking a sacred artifact, such as maybe a headdress that Indians wear, and using it and clothing from a culture and making fun of it or using it as a costume, which that is not what they are. They mean something, they're traditional, they mean something to their values. Especially people today aren't willing to research and learn about it and come to the realization that some things they may do can hurt another culture and it can offend people. Did it change?
Yeah. Did it freeze up?
My computer. Hold on. Did it get stuck? Or is that just my computer?
Let's see here.
Okay. So appreciation. You can show appreciation in all kinds of different ways. You can ask questions about people's culture and actually engage in a conversation with people that may be different than you are. And it really makes the other person that you're talking to really excited about that, because people today don't take time to actually get to know another person that might be different than them and about their culture and why they do things the way they do them, their traditions, their values. People just don't do that today. And knowing the history and background of a culture, whether it be understanding a dance or listening to a song of theirs, can help show appreciation for a culture. Okay, so these are examples, two pictures of examples of celebrities appropriating cultures. So the picture on the left are three models, and they have these big, colorful dreads in their hair that is of African culture, and they're using it as kind of like a costume, like I mentioned earlier. And so the picture on the right is making fun, is something we actually talked about in class briefly. I think Destinee brought it up about the fashion show that made fun of blackface. This fashion show was making fun of that kind of as a joke, and it was, I don't know why you would use a culture to make money or to do any sort of thing like that, but that's what they were doing. They were making it commercialized and they were just using it for the money, pretty much. And I think that's all I have.
Okay. Let's see here. I'm gonna stop share. Okay. So yeah, we didn't have any questions yet. So thank you so much for that, Elizabeth. And I think that was a big thing, was learning what does it mean to appropriate a culture and what does it mean to appreciate a culture. And I think it's really important when we're learning about other cultures, or when we're taking part in things that are culturally relevant, that we do take the time to understand them. Thank you so much for that, Elizabeth. Okay, so once again, if anyone had any questions, or if you have any questions or anything that you want to add, please feel free to do that in the chat section, and then we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. Raina, you're going to be next.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Can y'all see that?
Yes.
All right. So for mine, I did. I'm talking about the disconnect that we see typically between African American communities and culture and Afro-Latino people. So first thing we have to kind of discuss is the transatlantic slave trade. And from this map, you can see that everyone that came to the New World was from Western Africa. So that's why we do see a lot of that Western African culture within Black community and more specifically within Afro-Latin communities. One thing that's very important to note is that West African culture tends to be very vibrant. It's very charismatic. It's just really high. It translates so well over when the slaves brought it over here because it meant so much to the people. And I have a video. Go back. And it just kind of shows some of that culture, not that one. So. This is like a West African dance. I believe they're in the country of Niger, which is more inward, but it's still a lot of slaves did come from that country. So so you can see from the clothing to the music to the dance that this, like, their culture to them is very important. It's very vibrant. It's very charismatic. It's just a very beautiful culture, and that was brought over when the slaves came into the New World. Unfortunately, when they did come over, a lot of their culture was stripped from them or was suppressed because white people didn't see it as good or as white, I guess you could say. So they either whitewashed it or tried to suppress it. But one thing that I found when I was studying is that when they were coming, the slaves were coming on these ships for months and months and months, these month-long journeys. Sometimes the white captors would let them out of the ship and to dance. Usually it was for either the entertainment of the white people or to allow their cargo, is what they would call them, to stay healthy. So that way they had healthy slaves for when they came into the country. But when they allowed them to do that, they were also allowing them to continue practicing their culture, continue practicing their dances and their music, and that helped push it when it came to the New World. So to kind of study the disconnect, we have to look at the individual cultures. So the first slaves that came into the United States, I believe, was in 1681, I believe. It's in my paper, but I didn't write it down. They were called the 20-odd Negroes, and they came into Jamestown, Virginia. And after that, we just saw more and more and more, and thousands and hundreds of thousands of slaves continue to come into the country. And with them, they brought their cultures. One of these things that we still see reflected of West African culture and the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And I spoke with one of the people that I interviewed. Her name's Lucille Hooper. She's been attending these churches for 70 plus years. And she kind of said how the services are very energetic. The pastors are very charismatic. We see a lot of that call and response. All of these characteristics are also characteristics of West African culture. And despite the fact that this is a Christian culture, which was pushed onto a lot of Africans by the white slave owners, the fact that their services still tend to be very heavy in music and dance is a reflection of the West African culture. Another West African culture that we still see in the United States, specifically in South Carolina and Georgia along the coastline, is the culture of Gullah. I feel like Gullah is more connected to West African culture than what a lot of African Americans are. They speak this language called Geechee, which is a combination of West African language and English language. And I have a short video that demonstrates that if you guys have never heard Geechee before.
Bam.
Bam.
Let them know what bam means.
So bam, that basically mean like let's say you frying some fish and that thing like that, like bam, you know, or you the first one that finish your task. Bam.
Anything that's busting down here in Charleston always referring to food. And I mean it tastes real good. Real good.
Red rice.
That red rice be busting. That
sweet tea.
What a place in Buford, Gallagher.
So that's just a few of the words that are in Gitche. And another thing to note, oops, sorry, that's the next video. Another thing to note is that in Charleston, and in Charleston specifically, which was a major port for slavery, they do tend to have, since they have Gitche, that kind of shows that they are very influenced by that West African culture, as we can also see in these two pictures. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been down to Charleston, but you always see like the basket weavings and the flower weavings. That is a aspect directly from West Africa. And this picture on the right is a lady weaving a basket in West Africa. So you can see, you know, the direct relation. And then the final thing that we kind of see within the African-American community was the Black arts movement that we had, that happened in the 1960s. During this time, it was just kind of this just amplified boom of just African-American people starting to connect with their Blackness, connect with their African roots, wanting to express this side of them that white people have been suppressing. They were going against the grain and going against what society was deeming as good or perfect. They weren't being silenced anymore. So the culture, West African culture that we see in Latin American culture, I'm not going to harp on this too much because we've studied this a lot, but we see the presence of dance and song in Latin American cultures. So with dances like son, salsa, merengue, bachata, there's a direct correlation to West African dances. Same thing with music. A lot of instruments used in Latin American music, instruments are of West African descent or close, similar. And a final thing that we see, this isn't a popular thing, but it is prevalent within a few of the countries. There's this ceremony called the Santeria, I believe, and it's a West African. They have like a West African god, and we see this religion in Cuba, some places in Haiti, and I believe the other one was Ecuador. And here's the video. Like even listening to the music on this video, you can see the connection.
This is the beginning of a religious ceremony. The religion is Santeria. To fully understand the mystique of Castro's power, one has to be aware of the influence of Santeria on Cuba's African soul.
So like even the music that they were playing, if you've ever listened to like West African music, it sounds very similar. And so we're also going to talk about the shared connect that we see between Africans and between Latin Americans and Black Americans. One thing is hair. Hair in the Black community is a really big deal. Hair it's not just the biology of the hair. There's a culture behind the hair. Hair is used. It's a characteristic of us. Some people, like even when some slaves, they would braid rice into their hair for long journeys so they had food. Like hair is just deeply rooted in African culture, whether you're from the United States, Cuba, Africa, wherever. Another thing that we see that's a connect between African Americans and a lot of Afro-Latinos is religion, because Catholic or Christian religions were placed onto us when we're placed on African Americans and Afro-Latinos when they came to the New World. A lot of them tend to have Christian religion or Catholic religion. And the final thing, and I thought this one was one of the most important, was the Black experience, from colorism to racism to prejudice, like everything to some degree. And it's that what we experience here, they experience it in Latin America, we all experience it. And I have a video that talks specifically about the, that talks specifically about the prejudices that Afro-Latins experience, because we don't usually hear about that often. Control. Ooh, it's not working.
Cosa es ser afroperuano? Invisibles.
Yo siento que soy invisible cuando le digo a alguien que existe el racismo en el Perú y no
Can
me...
you guys read the subtitles? Because if y'all can't read it, then okay.
No me llamo ni morenita, ni zambita, ni morocha.
Invisibles.
Como que nos reducen a una cosa, un pedazo de carne, ¿me entiendes?
O sea, vas a buscar trabajo y tú ves en una página de periódico que dice, no sé, alta y no sé qué, te es clara.
Y es que todo lo negro parece estar vinculado hacia lo negro.
So even in these Latin American countries, there's still this idea that being dark or being black is bad, is negative, is not what you should be. And another thing, the final thing that we have that connect is the shared like our shared history. Even if you're from Cuba, if you're Afro-Latin from Dominican Republic, if you're from the United States, you have a shared history. Their people came from West Africa. Despite all these similarities, there is still a very strong disconnect between the two groups of people. The first major thing that we have is language. Because the United States, because the colonies were, because England was the prominent country within the United States, a lot of slaves brought into North America speak English. And then because Spain was the prominent country in Latin America, a lot of those people either speak Portuguese or they speak Spanish. So that just it's hard to connect with somebody if you can't understand what they're saying. So next thing we kind of see is demographics. In Latin America, 72% of people are, I'm using Dominican Republic as the prime example. 72% of those people are mulatto, which basically means mixed. 16% are considered white or European, and then 11% are considered Dominican. But in the United States, we have a much bigger, mix of people. And so that kind of plays into the fact that we kind of don't connect. Like they kind of have their culture and we have ours, and they're completely different. And then a final thing, and I thought this was the most present, why we see this strong disconnect, is this acceptance of Blackness in a lot of Latin American cultures. And I believe this video uses the Dominican Republic, for example. There's this rejection or this idea that people don't want to accept the fact that they're Black or accept that they came from African. That they came from Africa. And here's just a short little clip.
Different republics.
Help me to understand, in America, all these people would be Black. But here, who's Black?
You are Black. Oh, no, I'm not Black. I am something else. Dominicans are in complete denial of who they are. Even today, everybody says the motherland here is Spain.
Because of the media, because of Martin Luther King, because of the fights against.
So just to reiterate on what he was saying, there is just such this big rejection of Blackness in the Dominican Republic and in a lot of these Latin cultures. But in the United States, it's kind of, race is such a big thing where it's like, you can't help but accept that you're Black. Like everything reminds you that you're Black, you know, like you go out and you might get treated a certain way. It's because you're Black. You're just always reminded of that Blackness. So there's more of an acceptance of it. So it's really hard to connect with another group of people when they don't accept who they are, which kind of feels like they're kind of rejecting who you are. And that just really plays a big, that's just a really big factor into the disconnect between African Americans and Afro-Latinos. And then that's it. I can't hear anything. Hello?
Great job.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Raina. So really quickly, could you say what year you're in and what your major is?
I am a freshman, and I'm a biology major with a minor in business.
Beautiful. We're getting a request, and this is probably the same. So for all of you that are using video, if you could put the links of the videos in the chat so that if people want to look at the videos later that they can. Okay, that was a great question, Aaron. So yeah, you guys feel free to add those links to the chat. Next is Ansley. And after Ansley will be you, Kyla.
Alrighty, just give me one moment to get my screen up. There we go. So I should be sharing my screen now.
I can see it.
Okay. So my essay and research project was on Afro-Latin dance in America, just mainly focusing on how prevalent it is in America, what it's doing in America, is it in America, question mark, question mark, question mark. Things like that. So the first dance we're going to cover today is Merengue. It hails from the Dominican Republic and was based off the English contra dance. The Spanish took the English contra dance and made a version of it called contra danza española. And then when they went over to the Dominican Republic, they took that with them. Eventually there, it mixed with some African influences and became merengue. During the occupation, U.S. occupation of the Dominican Republic, a lot of the U.S. Marines found that they couldn't really dance merengue. I really don't see how they couldn't, because just how. But anyway. They mixed it with the foxtrot and the two-step and created merengue estilo Yankee, or Yankee merengue. So that is eventually became a genre called pambache, I believe it's pronounced, or pambiche. But during the reign of, well, the government of Trujillo and Bosch, and shortly after that, there was a mass immigration of Dominicans to the US, particularly the New York area. There, merengue became very culturally significant for the Dominicans. They began to hold on to it very tightly because it was a symbol of being Dominican. It was part of their heritage. They were Dominican and the music was Dominican, and they were gonna hold on to it. And eventually, it became a little bit more popular in the US, and one of the more famous merengue artists was Johnny Ventura. He borrowed stylistic elements from Elvis and mixed R&B into merengue a little bit. So it had a bit more of a rockish lilt, just a little bit. But there's still debate over whether or not the merengue done in America is actual merengue or not. I tend to think it is. Others don't, but to each his own, I assume. So the next dance we're going to be talking about is bachata. It is also from the Dominican Republic. And how bachata came to be was people moved from one side of the Dominican Republic to the other. And as they did, they took merengue with them. And a lot of these people ended up living in areas called shanty towns, which are just kind of ramshackle neighborhoods near ports. There, merengue kind of turned into bachata, and it picked up a lot of its lyrics from there. A lot of the more sensual or crudeness of it in a bit. But a lot of people really didn't like merengue. They thought it was too crude, too crass, things like that. They weren't very happy with it. And for a while, it just stayed in the shantytown area until about the 1990s, when Juan Luis Guerra released an album called Bachata Rosa. Bachata Rosa went on to get a Grammy, and that really shifted the entire tide of popularity in the favor of bachata, and a lot of people started to like it more. And during, once again, that mass immigration, bachata became a Dominican cultural symbol, and it became a lot more popular because it was something that was Dominican, and it was easily distinguishable from everyone else's kind of Latin music. so they could tell that it was theirs. They could tell it was theirs. Eventually, this led to the creation of a band called Aventura. They were formed in the 1990s, and they were completely comprised of Dominican Americans. They sung a bit of a different kind of bachata. It had a little more rock and R&B mixed into it. I believe they liked using electric guitar a little bit. But Aventura sung a lot about more recent themes or more recent issues, such as the abortion and being a single mother, things like that. So they incorporated modern themes into their music. They also, which I thought was interesting, released one of the first Spanglish songs, so Spanish and English kind of mixed together, called Cuando Volverá, and I thought that was just an interesting fact. Eventually, they broke up in 2011, but soon after that, some of the other artists went on to create their own labels. Now, salsa is the next dance, and it originated in New York City during the 1960s and 1970s. What happened was Cuban dance and Puerto Rican dance mixed together, and boom, salsa. Toca con salsa was a common saying of the day, and it just kind of meant like hit it or play it. Salsa is probably one of the most widely popular Latin dances in America. Before I took this class, I knew nothing about merengue or bachata, but I knew what salsa was. I had a vague idea of it. And eventually it just kind of, it spread a lot more. It spread to Japan and Africa and Europe. But the modern representation of salsa, many people get it very, very wrong. Modern shows, like very popular ones, like So You Think You Can Dance or Dancing with the Stars. They show this flashy, grandiose version of salsa where there's all these fancy moves and lifts and stuff. And that's not really salsa. Salsa is a lot more technique oriented. And because it's, they're trying to teach people who've never danced this dance over a short period of time, they end up filling in the gaps where they're not exactly skilled enough in that technique with big flashy lifts or moves to kind of show this different kind of version of salsa and just make it look more like these people know what they're doing. And a lot of more modern audiences, they don't realize that that's not really salsa due to the fact that they've never been exposed to real salsa. Kizomba, which is the last dance I'm going to talk about today, is probably my favorite dance that I've learned this semester. It originated in Angola in the 1980s, though there's serious debate over its origins. Some say it came from Cape Verde, some say it came from a place called Luanda. People get very mad about this. So, but yeah, there's still debate over its origins. But it didn't really become a codified dance, or certain of its moves didn't become codified until it moved to Lisbon, Portugal. There was a civil war in Angola, and a lot of Portuguese-speaking Angolans packed up and were like, we're going to Portugal. So they took Kizomba with them, and a lot of the moves became codified over there. And it stayed mainly in Portugal and Angola in that area until a group called Africa Dançar came to be. That was in the last 20 years or so, I would say. Africa Dançar began to broadcast a lot of their competitions and a lot of their music, and Kizomba became widely more popular. They're also responsible for the Kizomba Nation platform, which, as far as I can tell, does not exist anymore, sadly. It was originally a platform where teachers and students of Kizomba could connect. There was lots of music and dance videos on it, but as far as I can tell, they have taken the website down. I've tried to find it, I can't. I have found their YouTube channel, but there has been no movement on that channel since 2014. So as far as I can tell, sadly, the platform is dead. However, within America, we do have the Miami Kizomba Festival. This has grown bigger over the years and is still a very active festival run by Eddie and Danny Rocha. They kind of take people through the history of Kizomba, how it came from Semba and things like that. And they're very careful of cultural appropriation. They make sure everybody knows the history of the dance. And as far as I can tell, it's still up and running and going today. But thank you for listening to my presentation. Yay!
Nice job, Ansley. Thank you so much. Very, very nice. So next we're going to have Kyla giving her presentation. Do you want me to share yours, or are you going to share your screen, Kyla?
You can share my screen. You can share it.
Okay, cool.
Hey guys, my laptop's about to die, so I'm gonna run and get my charger real quick.
Okay. So while I'm getting this pulled up, why don't you kind of give everybody an idea of what your presentation's on, Kyla?
My presentation is on overall relationship between African Americans and Afro-Latinos. So similar to what Raina was doing, but just a more general look at the situation.
Okay, can you see your presentation up on my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. I'm ready.
All right, so my research paper and topic was relations of African Americans and Afro-Latinx people. Next slide, please. The first thing to understand, to better understand the relationship between these two demographics of people, is the context of race. And that race is not something that is biological. It is a man-made concept and should be therefore thought of and understood of as a social construct rather than something that biologically separates us all. And race has different contexts within different regions, especially concerning the African diaspora. So the context of race is different and means something different in America than what it does in Latin America, in the Caribbean, and even in Africa. Next slide. So for the context of racism within the United States as we know it, it is a very clear-cut separation between white and Black, and Blackness during that time was essentially defined as just the absence of whiteness rather than a person. It was just the absence of a white person. It was very institutionalized and across the board in terms of punishment, the way segregation was handled. And this is very clear in the use of the one drop rule, which is a rule applied to anybody who has even one drop, hence the name, has one drop of African ancestry or African blood in their lineage, which would then lead other people, other white people, to classify and label them as Black rather than whatever else they identify, that the individual themselves identifies as. Next slide. In Latin America, there is a debate of whether or not racism even exists. There are some who believe it does not exist or is not an issue as it is in the United States, simply because there is such a racial mix within that region. However, it is there. Racism is present in Latin America. However, it is more subtle. A lot of high-ranking upper class Latin Americans, they have a different mindset towards race, where they see whitening as a betterment towards the race and in the country as a whole. Because the idea is, if you mix a person of African descent with someone of European descent, the child will come out lighter than the African parent, which is the desired effect. And with racism in Latin America, it is subtle and covers more than, it covers more in terms of someone's life than it would in America, where it is very just brutal and clear cut. In Latin America, your race and your skin color, your ancestry, it can affect your occupation, your job, where you physically live. It can affect the type of jobs you get. It can affect the type of people you're around. There is an acknowledged ceiling where someone of a certain ancestry won't be able to make it any further in society. Even though a lot of politicians, high-ranking government officials, if the one drop rule was applied to them, most of them would have been considered Black rather than just being of a better race. Next slide, please. The main example I found in my research is Miami, Florida, where there's a clear interaction between African Americans and Afro-Latinos, specifically Afro-Cubans. During the time before Jim Crow, Afro-Cubans were simply treated as Cubans. So them and their white counterparts, they interacted together as a whole, as a one Cuban identity. However, once Jim Crow came into place and there was more racial tension within the United States, the white Cubans decided to distance themselves from Afro-Cubans so they wouldn't be associated and essentially be considered Black as well. Because they recognized the racial hierarchy that was present in America, and to not be placed any further, they distanced themselves from Afro-Cubans, and Afro-Cubans were then generalized and put together with African Americans. And this is seen with baseball leagues, where Afro-Cubans at first had their own leagues and baseball teams that were fully Afro-Cuban, but once Jim Crow was put into place, a lot of Cuban baseball teams were segregated, and the Afro-Cuban baseball players were then placed with African American baseball players, making those teams integrated in terms of different cultures. And to briefly talk about relations between African Americans and Afro-Cubans before Jim Crow, similar to what Raina was saying, there was a cultural barrier in terms of the food they ate, what they wore, how they interacted with family, and also there was a very big language barrier that kind of kept them separated. And Afro-Cubans also made an effort to simply separate themselves from African Americans. There was an example used where Afro-Cuban club was put into place, and they would deny anyone who wasn't of Cuban descent, even if they were African American and fit all the criteria that they had. And to jump back to the past again, after Jim Crow, they had to move into different spaces simply because there were no other places for them to live amongst white Cubans at that point. So Afro-Cubans and African Americans, due to Jim Crow, were sort of forcibly put together and were forced to interact with each other. There wasn't a lot of solidarity politically, culturally, or just anything like that in the beginning, but as the years went on, a solidarity sort of came into place because there was an understanding that we are both in the same situation, regardless of where we came from or how we live our lives. We are essentially in this together, and it would be better for us to stick together as one rather than to have infighting and disagree with one another. And with relations between Afro-Latinx people and African Americans today, I'm there is evidence of that same mentality prevalent today within some areas, but there are also parts where there is a disconnect where they simply, again, don't want to be associated with African Americans. And even within the Latinx community, they address African Americans and Afro-Latinos in certain ways instead of calling, if a Latin American person was addressing someone who was African American, they would call the person a negra or negro. But if they were addressing someone who they culturally had something in common with, an Afro-Latinx person, they would call that person a moreno or morena. So even subconsciously, there is a disconnect and separation between the two. Thank you.
Very, very nice. Thank you so much, Kyla. Very good. So we have 2 more presentations, and it's looking like we're going to end up going over. So please feel free, if it goes over the time that you can be here, our guests, my feelings won't be hurt if you have to leave early. I just wanted to acknowledge the time. Let's have Jayden, how about you do your presentation now?
Say the best for the last.
Oh no, Desiree's still going too. What you talking about?
But you can pull mine up.
Yeah, okay, let me see here. Pulling it up now. Okay. It's just taking a second. Your file is like really big, Jayden.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'll just go over with my, with mine.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So basically what my presentation about is kind of just diving into the deeper roots of like each style of the dance. What my question was why? Why create something like this during a time when you were being oppressed and having your culture and your religion stripped from you? Just during my research, I always had that question of why, why this dance, why that move? Just always had a question why. Let's see. Okay, got it up.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I was about to say, you can just go straight to the third slide if you want to.
The third one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so during my research, during the West African movement, of course, we all know from school and history over time, just due to the slave trade, the Atlantic slave trade, during the 1600s, that slaves were brought over to the New World. But also what I learned in this class were that slaves were also brought to Brazil, Cuba, Portugal, the Caribbeans. I've always thought it was just the New World, and it wasn't. A lot of other countries participated in slavery. So even though that the West Africans were kind of forced to change their lifestyle and just having everything stripped from them and kind of being told what to do, dancing was always a major part of their life, even before, the ship and everything. Dance was always a major thing. They used dance, as part of their religion, just even for healing people, praying for rain over crops, even for celebrations. So I just kind of found it interesting that, instead of a song or, a certain instrument or a weapon, with being oppressed, they were like, well, we're going to dance, They took everything from us, but they can't take dance away from us. So, of course, no one really understood why the Africans were dancing. But I just really want to discover like what was the symbolism just behind their movements. So during my research, I found that a griotic dance were dances that were taught to tell stories to the children. Because of course, with our history, children and parents tended to be separated, and they really couldn't, sit down, have a conversation with each other and talk. So to interact with their kids and just kind of tell them, what was going on, they taught it through dance, which I kind of found interesting because it's almost like dance is a whole nother language. Of course, they also danced just in the free time, when they were in their cabins or anything out working. If, anybody in the group was sick, they danced over that sickly person, hoping that the guys will answer their prayers and heal that person. Furthermore, I have found out that with them being restricted from expressing themselves, specifically the West African dance, foot shuffling and hip and torso movement were kind of just their way to retaliate, because of course they couldn't do anything or they'll be killed. So with those slight movements and gestures, they were able to, do that while picking crops or just even in their free time. And then, if a slave master or anything arrived, they could stiffen up. You can go to the next slide.
Sorry.
You're fine. I was about to say, do you want to pull the videos like just at the end, or?
Yeah, I'll put the videos in the links you sent me. I'll put them in the chat section so people can watch videos at home. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I labeled them and everything.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, just despite West Africans being oppressed, eventually we made it to the Dominican Republic and Bachata formed. So Bachata at first was just seen as like a commoner dance and everything. It wasn't like, oh that's cool, it's just seen as a common dance. But later on down the road, it gave Dominicans a sense of identity and nationality. But just before Bachata, before it was given a name, it was just seen as poor people doing it. Poor people had nothing else to do in their free time, so they danced, and that's how everybody else, the other classes, viewed it. Furthermore, I know I wanted to know, with learning the movements in class, why specifically those movements. Come to find out, with Bachata, slaves were able to free the shackles off their feet and run away. I think in one of the books I was reading, there were, I think it was a total of 15 slaves. They were doing their daily work as usual, and they all danced in the same rhythm. And I think it was right before sunset. They had been dancing for a while. They eventually were all able to slip out of the shackles together because they were all chained to one another, and they were just able to escape. I also found that Bachata kind of originated from the African root part, that it expressed pain and sadness when families were being torn apart from each other. Just hence why kind of the percussion and bongos play such a huge role in the music. It symbolizes kind of a heartbeat between the family members. You can go to the next slide.
Okay.
I had to go down there to the arrow.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. There we go.
Okay. So without a doubt, Merengue, just during my research and spending time in class, Merengue had been one of the heaviest influenced dance styles. Only because it kind of came after the revolt in Santa Monica. Say that right?
Dominique.
Close. So that kind of led to the creation of it, which kind of found unique that you start a revolt and then, you know, celebration, you come up with a dance that's, you know, kind of signifying, you know, that you were able to free yourself. Just like the same thing that happened in Haiti, because Haiti has basically kind of inspired all these other Africans with being able to revolt against the French and stand up for themselves. That was kind of unique. So merengue is the most basic dance because it almost feels as that you're walking. And before the revolt in Saint Dominique, slaves were also chained together and were forced to drag one leg as they cut sugar cane to the beat of drums and everything, and to stay efficient while they were cutting sugar cane, so, you know, they wouldn't fall on top of each other and make mistakes and everything. They just came up with this dance style, mind you, just picking sugar cane, just to just kind of following your partner. Because when you watch the video, you'll notice that it's just a fluid flow motion with you and your partner. And like I said, it's so basic because it just feels like you're walking. And the slaves were just able to use that kind of just to help with their work and also express themselves and kind of stay out of trouble. You can go to the next slide. And then we get to song. Cuba was going through a struggle trying to find itself and to find its identity and nationality, because North America and Europe played such a big role in brainwashing Cuba. And that's kind of where I think Raina hit on it too, where kind of the whitewash was coming from. Cuba was just being brainwashed because you had North America kind of saying like, hey, if you want to be like this, you got to do this. And then you had Europe over here kind of just doing the same thing. If you want to be like this, you got to do this. So they were just stuck in between because they didn't know if, wow, you know, like, do I want to be North American or, you know, European? Like, what do I do? So they kind of, the higher officials, they didn't want to admit to it, but they kind of relied on the lower class Cubans to come up with something that would kind of state like, hey, I'm Cuban, I'm a true Cuban, even though they don't want to give credit to the lower class. But nevertheless, song was created. It could be, the way it was presented, it could be spiritual or a love song, or just a plain old dance. And as you'll see through the videos and everything, most of these dances are family friendly, because of course with commercialization over the years, some of these dances have been overly sexualized or just misinterpreted wrong completely. But with song, it was just a blend of African and Spanish cultures all together. And of course, with the instrument play being involved, they used the African roots instruments as far as the clave and bongos, just to create songs for song. And you'll see just over the course of videos, you'll always have that African root in each dance, because you'll hear either that clave or that bongo or just something with a percussion. Eventually, song led to the creation of salsa, which was more heavily influenced on the Spanish side. And you can go ahead and change slides, Mr. Day.
And you better mention Dance Zone now.
I'm getting there.
Okay. Yes, sir. Okay.
So I just want to go ahead and get the slide up and everything. So Dance Zone was something that had became heavily whitewashed. The Americans seen had the Cubans dance and everything, and it was like, oh, you know, so eventually took it back to the Americas, and of course TV and everything. And this is where kind of I think this was near the jazz era and everything. And this is kind of where when I was doing the research, which I just found out with class and everything, just with the swing and what was the other dance? The swing.
Lindy or the Jitterbug?
There you go. That one. But with those being influenced from African roots and then, you know, transferred through Cuba, but then being whitewashed just because white Americans didn't like that, oh, this came from Afro-Cubans. Okay, well, let's change this, bam, slap our name on it, and then commercialize it all over TV, all over, you know, jazz clubs, speakeasies, all that. Then this brings us to salsa. So salsa just opened up a new horizon when it came to the Afro-Cubans and the Cuban community, because salsa was mainly focused on the rhythm of the music. Salsa was very spontaneous, and there wasn't a lot of concrete dance steps to it, as you'll see in the Black Root Salsa video, because I really enjoyed the video that I have found. The way they talk about it is just with the Afro-Cuban community, it just allowed them to freely express themselves, something they never really had the privilege to do over the years. So even with salsa, you can still hear the African roots from the clave. The clave is a big benefactor into salsa, because it almost sounds like if you kind of go back to the West African movements, it almost sounds like a tribe gathering for a celebration. You hear very faint sounds of it, you know, in today's salsa and everything. You just still have that African root behind it. And then you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
And lastly, here comes the most heavy, controversial dance that I ever have researched. Kizomba. Man. So Kizomba is seen as a very sexual dance. But what I researched and what I discovered, that is really not sexual. It's almost almost a love connect dance. And we have touched on this topic a lot in class. With Kizomba, there's just been a lot of bad talk and shame put on it. Even just with it traveling to different countries, they all have tweaked it in their, you know, in their way, because they don't approve of how close you get to your partner, or, you know, even with the rhythm of the music and how you're moving with your partner. So a lot of countries have changed this dance, and this kind of touches on Ali's appropriation versus appreciation. Because people are taking a dance that started, you know, in the African root culture, and all because they didn't like something that was involved in it, they changed it and kind of never gave his credit back. But with saying that, so Kizomba is kind of a young people's dance. Just kind of when it came in, it's almost Kizomba means party, if I remember correct.
Yeah.
So Kizomba means party, and of course there can be negative connotations when you hear party, but all parties are not bad. With Kizomba, I noticed with the dance style, me personally, there was nothing very sexual. It's just a way to express love for one another. And then just even with the instrument play and the percussions, there's also they say it mimics after Simba sounds, which the video will also touch on that, which is related to the African roots also. But the way Kizomba works is a slow pitch pace dance, but then it gradually also speeds up. And overall, with these dances, leaving y'all today with all this information, I just want you to kind of be enlightened, just because even with today, with TikTok and all these dances and stuff that's coming out now, you always have that root that hints to why this dance was created, but we never kind of give that appreciation to where it comes from originally. And I'm very heavy. I love music. I always have appreciation for music, and I always had appreciation for other cultures. So spending time with Miss Adalia and the whole Afro-Latin class kind of really brightened my horizon just on different cultures and just how people can misinterpret a lot of things, and just taking the time out your day to be like, just be thankful. Like, man, I wouldn't have this if it wasn't for such and such. And other than that, that's my presentation.
Yay! Thank you so much, Jayden. So something I just wanted to say real quick about Kizomba, because it's also my job as a professor to make sure that all the story is told. Kizomba actually is a family dance. And so in Angola, it's not uncommon to see children dancing with their grandparents, and uncles dancing with their nieces, and grandmas dancing with their grandsons, and dads dancing with their daughters. It's a family dance. And I have friends who are Angolan, and they talk about when their families got together to have gatherings and parties, and Kizomba was playing or Simba was playing, the children, it would go late, and the children would fall asleep under the tables, because that's where they would play, listening to Kizomba and Simba music and people dancing. So Kizomba, as it is a family dance. When it traveled to more European Western countries, it became sexualized, because it's such a the dance itself. If you ever want to see what real Kizomba looks like, if you when you do a search on YouTube, type in Angolan Kizomba. Don't type in Kizomba, because you will get some crazy stuff, and the most popular stuff is not the real Kizomba. A lot of it is very overly sexualized. It's become very commercialized. A lot of attention has been put on trying to make money from events and stuff, rather than celebrating the culture. So that's why events like the Miami Kizomba Festival, there's other Kizomba festivals now that are really popular, that are now, they're trying to fight that tide of appropriation and misinterpretation of the dance by including culturally relevant discussions in the classes and in the festivals, and really putting the onus on the instructors to tell the story. So if you're going to teach the dance, tell the history of the dance as well. So yeah, that is Kizomba. And we're going to finish up with the presentations with Destinee. Thank you so much, Jayden. And I do have questions that people have asked, and I'll put them in here after Destinee's presentation. And as I said, if you are not able to stick around for the Q&A, there's no love lost. If you can't do it, that's fine. This recording will be available, and I'll try to send the link to everyone who was present today if you want to watch it again. The other thing I would like to ask is if my students, is if you could share your source material for your research. So if you could just send me, I have your PowerPoints, but some of you at the end of your PowerPoints, you put your source material as your last slide. If you could just email that to me, I can also send that to this group of people if they want to get to the books or that you used to do your research, okay? All right, so Destinee, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so I did want to say this real quick. Aaron, he wrote, a lot of people outside of the specific dance communities listed mistake closeness for sexualization when viewing these dances, and that's very true. You know, closeness does not necessarily mean sexualization. I'm really happy you said that, Aaron. And I think that's something we get to think about, right? So Destinee, you're gonna share your screen?
I can.
Okay.
Okay. So do you guys see it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I did my research on the effects of colonization on the slaves' mental and how those effects are still prevalent today. So I started with a quote from Dr. Henri Clark. He was born in Alabama in 1915, and he stated best that Africans in the United States must remember that the slave ships brought no West Indians, no Caribbeans, no Jamaicans, or Trinidadians to this hemisphere. The slave ships brought only African people, and most of us took the semblance of nationality from the places where slave ships dropped us off.
Yes.
So here's a picture of him in the Pan-African flag, and here is a picture of like.
I think your screen has frozen. Sorry to cut you off. Let me see if I can share it through my computer.
Okay.
Because yeah, let me okay. Because I really want people to be able to see the quote that you just gave. So I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Can everyone see? Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Okay, so picking up from the quote, I use this picture, and it's it just shows like the many some of the many shades that African people come in. And I think like next slide, as we go on, we'll talk about the divide of the due to the African diaspora. So I put in this quote, well, in this picture, it's a British ship and there's a slave. The British were notorious for using like really violent tactics to keep their slaves in line. In some of the colonies like Jamaica, they were outnumbered 16-1. And in the British Guyana, they were outnumbered 20-1. So they were very afraid that the slaves would revolt. Some of the nations that they picked slaves from, they were already like warrior nations. So they in this number, it just shows that to keep like the vast number of slaves from overpowering them, they had to resort to really strict Exactly. Next slide, please. So I picked this picture. It's a darker woman and it's like a white hand. So I said that other tactics that the British used to keep their slaves and colonies in line were was almost emotional abuse due to some of the tactics. The masters would pick some slaves, certain slaves, and they would baptize them. And after baptizing them, they would give them names. One of the articles that I read, they named him James. So being that that was a common name during that time, like you could have, there was a king named James. There was like probably many men in the colony named James. So that caused the slaves that were given these names or given the last name of their masters to resonate with them and to kind of become loyal. They also trained them in trades like masonry, carpentry. So like now they had the skills that their masters had. And they also picked slaves that were not from the same region. So that could cause language divides, religious divides. And it also, because the slaves were from different regions, if one slave, like we'll just say from the country, like today, Nigeria, and another slave from the Benin area, they would not communicate together or agree to work together. So that kept revolt down because one side will always choose the master's side and the other. So it's like it just further divided the people and like allowed them to view themselves as different or the ones who were chosen better. So I looked into the treatment of slaves in the French colonies because there was also differences between French and British, like in history, going to war and seeing like who was a world power. So according to the Black Code, which is called Le Code Noir in French, the slaves in French territories were they were treated, you could say they were treated better because it was about 60 articles that governed how the French was to treat their slaves in their colonies. So on Sundays were to be rest days, religious days, and holidays were to be, they were not to work. They were supposed to be educated and baptized under the Catholic faith, and their master was supposed to feed and clothe them whenever they became sick. So this picture here is Toussaint. I can't really pronounce his last name, but he was a mixed race person in Saint-Domingue colony, which is Haiti today. And being like looking at this code, you would think like this is almost like a representation of the grass is greener. But because like you'll see like the slaves are educated, they have days off, their master cares for them. But here's a slave in that region, in that island, and this is how badly he was whipped. So it just shows that even though they had certain laws or rules in place, that they were still subjugated to harsh treatment. So this is a picture from, well, illustration from the revolt of slavery in Saint-Domingue. So a lot of they had a really large population that was mixed race. And the reason why I chose Toussaint, his father was a slave master and he sent him to France to study. And because like a lot of there was also a way for the slaves to become free in Saint-Domingue. It was so we had freed Black people, you had mixed race people, and then you had the slaves. And each one viewed themselves better off than the others. So it just showed like a divide. So when it came time for the revolution, the mixed race people, when France was having their revolution, they started to push for freedom. So they were already educated. So, and they had more education than some of the poor white men. So they just want, especially the freed Black men and the mixed race people, they wanted to be equal to the white men, being that they had some of the same opportunities. Next slide, please. So here's a short video of the Haitian Revolution. I'll link it below. The Haitian Revolution, it kind of set the precedent of the other slaves in the area because they were they were one of the biggest slaves. Well, they were the biggest slave colony, and they gained their independence. So it says the Haitian Revolution not only granted independence to the island and abolishment of slaves, but it also caused divide amongst the newly freed slaves. So as stated a few moments ago, the freed Black people, the freed Black people, the new slaves that were just coming out of freedom, and the mixed race people, once they had their freedom, they still had problems amongst one another because you had the mentality that the owners, the masters put on them that, well, because you have white, you're slightly better, or because you are from this region, you are less than. So it caused divide once the country was newly formed on who was to be in power, who was more superior. Next slide, please.
French Saint-Domingue was the richest colony in the Americas in the 18th century due to the production of products like coffee, tobacco, and cotton. But because of the importation of slaves, very distinct and often hostile ethnic groups lived side by side. There were around 20,000 whites, divided between the wealthy planters and the less powerful petits blancs, teachers, merchants, and the likes. Often rose up, for instance, in 1759.
Okay, so we can put this link in the chat section, you were thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There it goes.
Cool, thank you.
No problem. So on this slide, I talked about the control of the Black community by division. So I said, to this day, the effects of the African diaspora are still prevalent in the divisions that they created. So like you have divides in the lightness of our skin. You have the divide between brown skin, black skin, light skin. You have the divide of people who live in the suburbs or the people who still live in like lower, like projects or things. You have the divide between hair texture, those who choose to follow religion or political views. And it's still a way to separate and cause bickering amongst the community. Being that the system, especially in France and the French colonies and British colonies, both colonies spoke different language, but the fact that they both were able to still cause divides and cause their slaves to separate or want to be more white, and that caused divide between the ones who wanted to preserve their culture from like their homeland. It's really amazing, well, for lack of a better word.
Okay. Very nice. I didn't realize that was your last slide, so I was waiting for you to say something else.
Sorry.
So yeah, so those divisions you were saying here, a system set up in many languages centuries ago still has control even today.
Right. There's still like divide between like what Blackness is and like mainly between like the Caribbean and like British colonies. And the reason why I chose like America as the Britain colony, we a lot of times separate ourselves from like the Africans that were dropped off in the Caribbean or still on the mainland. And I feel like it has a lot to deal with the tactics that the masters used. They separated us, and we still, I guess through generations and generations, like instill that in our children, and it just became a way of life.
Thank you so much, Destinee. That was actually a really nice way to end the presentations. It's about 2:10 right now, and if folks want to stick around, I was going to give about 20 minutes to do a discussion. I had some questions that people have asked, and so I thought I would go ahead and put those questions here. And I put them on the Google Keep document. So someone was asking, they saw the picture of the three models that you showed, Elizabeth, And we're wondering if inspiration from the African culture incorporated in their expression of art could also be a factor of appropriation. So anything anybody wants to, and you guys, people who are here, y'all can unmute yourselves, but just say your name so we know who's talking. So there was the question about the picture of the models that had their hair, you know, and with all the different colors and stuff in it. The 3 white young ladies, the idea of inspiration, that inspiring, and is that appropriation or not?
So in today's society, people are going to take things how they want to take them. Some people see that picture and take it offensive, but some people might see that picture and take it as, oh, they're just using that to kind of spread that like culture. But I just think people are just going to take it how they want to. It can be seen as an expression of the art, but it also could be taken offensive by people from African culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think it make all the difference, which we don't know. But if during that show they had a segment where they kind of went over the brief history of like the African roots and everything, that probably makes the difference whether it's appropriation or appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
I think also when it comes to like, especially with the hair and things, it's like you have people of a certain community who are like judged or like can't have the same opportunities if they were to keep their hair that way. And then you have like a picture on Vogue almost celebrating and saying it should be. So I think like always like to each his own, because body from that culture might be like, well, they're like putting us on the map, but like it's all up to the person.
And I think something is important as well is that I think we as a society, we're not at a place where we can people of other, because right now African roots are not celebrated in general. When anyone kind of takes something that is not of African descent and isn't connected in any way, we are, as a society, we're not at a place where we can, my opinion, where we can display, like what these young ladies did in the modeling show, display something and be able to say that it's appreciation. Because, in this particular situation, these girls who were probably walking down the runway, they made money from that. They got pictures taken from that. But a person of African descent wearing their hair that way wouldn't be able to get a job, or wouldn't be able to, walk down the street without someone, they could get stopped by the police. So we're not in a society yet where a white person could have their hair like that and it be seen as appreciation and not appropriation, simply because as a society, we haven't matured to the point where we even accept Blackness as people who deserve to live. I mean, just to be real. So that's just kind of my take on it. But I think too, what Jayden said, that like, if they had taken the time to, as the young ladies were, if they had Black women walking down the runway, and like behind them there was a voice saying, talking about the roots and how important hair is and how important it's connected to, Africanness, that might be a different story altogether. But yeah, So someone else asked, I put this question in the chat. Song and dance are both powerful forces for the maintenance of cultural memory over generations. What do you think is the importance of maintaining these traditions moving forward?
I think they're very important, and very important with an exclamation point, because I ain't gonna yell. But because we see it over time now, even with cookouts and family gatherings. Because I do dances that I learned at 5, 6 year old, watching the adults do it. Now here I am 20 doing the same thing that they was doing at the cookout. So, I think it's very important because it kind of eliminates that judgmental factor, whether it's race or, what your lifestyle is, all that. I think it kind of just erases that just out of everybody's head mentally with song and dance. Because personally, I have seen certain cookouts, some of my cousins who are gay, usually the family on a regular day would, shun them or not really talk to them or anything. But when it comes to cookouts and, the gatherings, everything, and everybody's saying and dancing, oh, nobody's thinking about that. So, I think, like I said, song and dance are two powerful forces. And I think it's very important that we try to maintain it just throughout just throughout generations, even if it's, something silly, like even now with, the TikTok dances, everything. But, later on down the road, that'll be something that'll kind of, be that's very heavily important and bring people together.
I also think it's important to maintain these traditions as a sense of identity. You have a dance or you have music or something that's specific to your culture. You just kind of feel this deeper connection with yourself, with your people that are like you. It just I think it has a lot to do with your identity, because when you get this sense of like lack of identity or identity loss, like that can be very, very detrimental. So like it just gives you a sense of belonging, a sense of who you are, and a sense of connection to other people.
Okay, so another question we got was, and how can we balance preserving traditions, appreciation, and sharing them with the world without appropriation?
Like I mentioned earlier in my presentation, I think you can balance appropriation and appreciation by actually learning about different cultures and researching, like I said, engaging in conversations with people you wouldn't normally talk to, and actually learning about them and their different traditions they may have, and them learning about you. It's just all about understanding and learning about people, really. That's kind of what everything is about, if you think about it. Because you have to work with different people you might not would work with. You have to learn about them and kind of adapt to different situations with them, but you also can't offend them and make fun of them, or like you have to appreciate them and what they do and why they do it.
I also think just kind of preserving, it's becoming harder, but at the same time it's not, just due to technology, because technology is kind of taken away from the social gathering part. A lot of people don't gather with each other because you see everybody's life online. So, they kind of feel like, well, what's the need of going, seeing them? I already know what they're doing. I already know what job they work. I already know how many kids they got. So, so it's kind of hard to balance and preserve traditions. But the only thing that we can do, I feel, is just keeping that together is, still, man, what's it called? They'll let you know I ain't been to one. Now, what the thing is when you go see your family?
Reunion.
Yeah. Like reunions, class reunions, and even just, taking time out your day to just record yourself dancing, if you feel like, because like I would never know what the electric slide and everything was if it wasn't for like my old grandma, uncles, and aunties. Like if they had have been, dead by the time I was born, I wouldn't have known what that was. So yeah, just with technology playing a big role, it's hard, but at the same time, we got to use technology to our advantage too, and kind of turn it into our own time capsule.
So another question we got was, who are present day griots? And the griot, it was an individual and still is an individual and rooted in African culture. And their whole job was to know the history. And then share the history of their tribe or of their family. And so who are our present day griots? Who do we turn to understand our history? And sorry, go ahead.
Or like grandparents or like the older aunties and stuff.
And those of you who are guests, feel free to unmute yourselves and show your camera now. I mean, if you want to participate, feel free to do that. Who are our modern day griots? I mean, at this point, you guys have become griot, right? I mean,
I'll unmute for a second. I
yes.
asked that question. I was trying to make sure my kids were not loud. Jayden, I saw this in your presentation. You mentioned sort of griotic dances. And so this is kind of for you and actually for everyone. I just wanted to know who are some of the contemporary folks that you're seeing carrying along the tradition, either out of cultural memory or with intention to keep telling the stories through movement and through song and through dance that are a sort of homage to culture and tradition. Who's carrying it on?
Well, if you want me to be real with you, sororities and fraternities for sure. For sure.
I might know a little bit about a sorority and fraternity. I'm a mute myself.
Yeah, that's because I've always grown up around Q's, which is Omega Psi Phi, and you even see it with their dance moves and how they stomp and they clap and all that. That's all. It just go back to African roots, and even with deltas, and even because my mom, she's a delta, and just even how they line up together and just follow in place and everything. All that hints back to some type of African root. So yeah, on top of us having grandparents and great grandparents, everything, I would also say sororities and fraternities also kind of carrying that history and presenting it to other people.
Sarah, and then Aaron.
I think we're also forgetting the most smallest population here in America that we're forgetting that first discovered this country, which is the indigenous people, the Native Americans. They're trying to keep their tradition alive with their native folk dancing and beating the drums here. Definitely them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah. Aaron, did you want to add something? I saw your camera come on. I was like, hey.
Microphone ain't on, I don't think.
There we go. Aaron, we can't hear you for some reason. Hold on. Try again.
Gotta make sure. If you're on the laptop, let's see. You either gotta make sure your camera got a microphone in it, or you gotta like plug earbuds in. They got like a microphone. Because I know some laptops or computers don't have microphones.
Maybe his microphone on his laptop is muted. He has to unmute it.
Okay. Okay, Aaron said, give him a moment. So, so yeah, I mean, you guys, we got some very great people. Really loved your presentations. You did a great job. You really did.
You all
And
did an amazing job. Here's my loud applause now. I learned so much. I learned something, so it's great.
I really learned a lot, especially from where my family is from. Like, I learned that, like, even from there was a ship that accidentally wasn't supposed to be shipped there to Honduras. African Americans had came there, and I learned a lot. Like, thank you guys so much for all that information.
oh, yay.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes. Yay. And Aaron will be our final person.
All right, so I'll let you guys know what happened with my mic. For whatever reason, Zoom wanted to use a external microphone that I don't have. Anyways, there's a lot of griots out there if you guys are willing to search for them. I know that I participate very heavily in the Latin dance community in the Raleigh area. So, you know, there's a lot of people such as Beto, who talks a lot about salsa and all of the dances and African dances that go into making up salsa, all of the orishas, all of the different aspects of what they bring to the dance and what actually brings it together to make salsa, because salsa isn't necessarily a dance, but a bunch of dances put together, which is kind of what the name implies. But, you know, even with Kizomba and all of these other dances, there's a lot of people here and in the world that know a lot of that information. And if you're looking at it from the outside, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of people think of closeness for sexuality, but it's not that. And if you actually go out into these communities, they're more than willing to teach you what it is about and all of the things that they've learned along the way.
Mm. And you're not far, Aaron. I lived in Raleigh for a minute. So whenever I come up there again, I'm gonna look for you when we can actually dance again.
Oh, definitely. I'm always there. You don't even have to look hard, like every night.
Do you usually go to Beto's thing at the Cuban restaurant?
Yeah. So Nathan is on the call too. I'm gonna call him out. Me and Nathan are both on his dance team, so we dance all the time.
Okay, cool. Well, I look forward to all of us getting together again. Yes, at Carmen's. I look forward to all of us being able to get together again in person. I want to really, really thank everyone who came and participated and watched and listened and showed your support remotely. And so I guess I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting, but I did record this, so there is a link for me to share, so I can share it with you guys. And that way that if you want to use it again for whatever you want to use it for, it's available to you. Okay? And thank you to my students. You guys take care. This is it. So I'll get y'all grades in next week.
All right.
All right, guys. Have a good day.